This is Hezbollah, the Party of God. These guerrilla fighters are waging a successful hit-and-run war on the Israeli army in South Lebanon. Yet this war is entering a new phase. Other groups are becoming more actively involved in the resistance to Israeli occupation. For the Israelis, this could mean it will be more costly for them to stay, and yet more difficult than ever for them to consider leaving. With a force of several hundred fighters, Hezbollah uses speed, mobility and stealth to attack its enemy. These classic guerrilla tactics have allowed Hezbollah to strike at the time and place of its choosing. Few journalists have ever been this far near the front with Hezbollah as they scout around an Israeli position just a few hundred meters on the top of the hill. But the fighters are anxious to remain anonymous. We were asked not to film their faces.
بالتأكيد نحن سنربح الحرب. نوع من التكتيك العسكري يدعى حرب
Of course, we are going to win this guerrilla war. We own the land, and we are the ones who are in the right. We believe our cause is just, and we have a total conviction and faith in God. We are going to carry on fighting because the Israelis are occupying our land. We are not occupying theirs.
لأن العدو الإسرائيلي هو الذي احتل الأرض ولسنا نحن المحتلين.
In another part of South Lebanon, fighters of the Amal movement discuss final details of a mission towards the Israeli lines. Recognizing that resistance enjoys popular backing, Amal has increased its attacks in recent years. We were given special permission by Amal to follow its fighters. The aim of their mission, we were told, was to move up on an Israeli position and attack. The fighters say a last prayer before leaving.
Of course, I don't feel sorry when I am fighting the enemy because he has taken my land. That's his purpose here. I want to defend this land.
In a Palestinian refugee camp in South Lebanon, history seems to be repeating itself. These well-armed Palestinian fighters are a new generation of die-hard radicals. Born inside a refugee camp and having nothing to lose, they are actively preparing for their chance to attack and destroy Israel. We gained exclusive access into the training ground of these Palestinians to see how they have rearmed and are ready to fight. It was Palestinian fighters such as these who first drew Israel into Lebanon over 20 years ago. Israel first invaded Lebanon in 1978 to strike at the Palestinian guerrillas who were launching attacks on Israel from South Lebanon. United Nations Resolution 425, passed in that year, called for Israel's total, immediate and unconditional withdrawal from South Lebanon. Israel disregarded the resolution and instead established what it called a security zone on 10% of Lebanese territory to prevent further guerrilla attacks into Israel. The security zone has remained 21 years after it was first set up. To this day it is still an area of continual insecurity. Hezbollah guerrillas have consistently attacked Israeli troops inside their security zone. As Hezbollah continues to inflict casualties on Israeli troops, the public mood in Israel has swung towards a withdrawal. For the leadership of Hezbollah, this has confirmed that their guerrilla war is a success.
The enemy has started to feel he is in a dilemma in Lebanon. There is a large increase in those asking for Israel to withdraw from Lebanon unconditionally. Surveys of Israeli public opinion show this figure is now at 55%. This is how we are winning.
Attacks against Israeli troops in South Lebanon have become increasingly successful in recent years. The guerrillas have scored numerous successes with ambushes and the use of remote-controlled roadside bombs against passing Israeli patrols.
What has happened in the past few years is that the resistance has become more effective, especially Hezbollah in its attacks. The Israelis are being hit. They're finding it much more difficult to travel on roads in the south. Perhaps the Israelis lost more in the past at various periods, but it's today that the Israelis are talking about a withdrawal. So there is a cumulative psychological effect of the resistance, which is far more important to my mind than simply the number of attacks or the number of casualties.
The fighters of Amal, like those of Hezbollah, have proved an elusive target for the Israelis. Through constant attacks, the guerrillas have sought to weaken the morale of the Israeli army rather than attempting a single knockout blow. Many Israelis today refer to South Lebanon as Israel's Vietnam. The fighters we accompanied have now moved close to Israel's security zone. So far they have remained undetected, but the Israelis on a nearby hill are constantly on guard for guerrillas moving below.
The nature of guerrilla warfare, it's totally different from a war perceived between two armies. It doesn't seem that the Israeli army has won over the Islamic resistance. It's not a question of the technology here. The nature of guerrilla warfare in these rigid, rugged mountains, terrains, makes it difficult for any regular army basically to capture the whole land.
Amal and Hezbollah come from the same community, the Shia Muslims, who are generally recognized as the largest of Lebanon's 17 religious minorities. The two organizations were established during Lebanon's 15-year civil war and have struggled with each other to win influence among the Shia. Thousands of Shia live in Beirut's southern suburbs. The poverty and crowded conditions of this area made it fertile ground for a party with a radical message. Young men found meaning and purpose in a new militancy. Hezbollah was able to back its appeal with financial support from the Islamic revolutionary regime in Iran. Money from Iran helped Hezbollah establish an extensive system of social welfare services badly needed by the Shia community. Determined not to lose out to Hezbollah's growing popularity, Amal has been keen to stage military operations of its own. The Amal fighters we followed have now moved close to an Israeli position. Amal recognizes that resistance against Israel wins popular support among its Shia constituency in Lebanon. This translates into votes during elections. Amal leaders are quick to put the record straight on their party's contribution to the resistance.
Some people want to say that Hezbollah is the only resistance in Lebanon. They say only part of the Lebanese are defending their land. Moreover, they say only part of the Shia are resisting. In fact, the whole of Lebanon is resisting.
All the Lebanese today feel outraged by Israel's occupation of their land and the steady rate of civilian casualties. This 2-year-old girl was injured by Israeli shelling. She was playing outside her home in a civilian area, several miles from the front line, when an Israeli shell exploded nearby. She has a piece of shrapnel lodged in her head and the possibility of permanent brain damage.
Israel does this sort of thing to incite the locals against the resistance. They think that by victimizing the children, this will make the parents turn against the resistance.
Recently we have seen more booby trap injuries. The children are targeted because these things, they usually have bright colors. They look like toys, or if they don't look like toys, they are something interesting for the kids. From what I heard, I think some tennis ball was a booby trap. Another one was a small radio transistor. Another one was like a teddy bear.
We consider the Israeli occupation to be an aggression. We have the right to resist in order to free our land. This is not negotiable. If you want to call that extremism, radicalism, or terrorism, we don't have a problem.
On the top of this hill, a 12th century Crusader castle in which the Israelis are based overlooks the frontline village of Arnoun. Fouad Fawaz has been able to revisit his village since last February when civilians pulled down fences that had kept it inside Israel's security zone. But he can only look at his house, which remains inside the Israeli area.
I'm living in Beirut because I can't live here in this village, you know. My house is really right up there, you know. And it's been for me more than 6-7 years. I can't go in there, you know, because it's really dangerous to go and go inside there, because the Israelis are on the top of the castle, you know, up there. And once they see me going in, they're going to start shooting.
Since this interview, the village of Arnoun has been retaken by the Israeli army following the death of an Israeli soldier killed by a bomb detonated on this road leading up to the castle. The Amal fighters have now taken up positions. We learn that this is to be a decoy attack. The main attack is to come from fighters on an adjacent hill. Through the haze we see in the distance the Israeli compound come under attack from mortar fire. An Amal official told us that the group had increased the number of attacks it carries out to as many as 30 operations a month. Having completed their mission, the fighters quickly retreat in case of an Israeli response. In this cemetery, families come to visit the graves of their loved ones killed fighting in the resistance. This mother lost one of her sons who fought with Hezbollah. She claims to be ready to sacrifice more of her family.
I still have 3 young boys and I'm willing to offer them to the resistance. I don't fear for them. We want Israel out of our land. They are the occupiers, not us. I am ready to volunteer our girls. If we don't make the sacrifice, who will? If we don't defend our land, who will?
While Israel struggles to come to terms with each body bag that comes home from South Lebanon, families of resistance fighters killed in action mix their grief with a defiance.
We are not scared of death. We know our road begins with sacrifice and ends with martyrdom. Death is with us every day in every operation. It would be embarrassing to say that I fear death when I am facing this enemy.
Another group also ready to make the ultimate sacrifice is the 13th of September group. This Palestinian faction takes its name from the date on which PLO leader Yasser Arafat signed a peace accord with Israel in 1993. For these men, that day marked the betrayal of the Palestinian cause.
We are resistance fighters. Resistance will never stop as long as Israel occupies Palestine, South Lebanon and the Golan Heights. It's our duty to prepare for all kinds of missions, including suicide missions.
من كافة الأنواع الاستشهادية أو الدوريات الخاصة ما دام الاحتلال مستمر.
We stress there is no peace with the Israeli enemy as long as it occupies even 1 inch of Palestine or Arab land.
In a hidden location in the heart of Ain al-Helwi refugee camp, Palestinians are taught military tactics in a school of war. This 130mm Chinese-made rocket, commonly categorized as a Katyusha, has been the guerrillas' most effective weapon in hitting northern Israel in the past. This classroom instruction suggests that the Katyusha will have a role in the future too. The Palestinians appear to have rearmed themselves and are ready to use South Lebanon once again as a launching pad for attacks on Israel. These radical groups have close links to Syria, which exercises a political and military dominance in most of Lebanon. The guerrilla war is a card for Syria to play in its own confrontation with Israel to win back the Golan Heights, which Israel has occupied since 1967.
The paradox in the south is very simply this. It's that the Syrians are not keen to defeat Israel in the south too soon. Because if the Israelis pull out of South Lebanon, then they will no longer have a means to hit the Israelis. They will no longer have a terrain on which to hit the Israelis, which means that they will no longer have leverage, the leverage they want for eventual negotiations on the Golan Heights.
While Amal has stated that it would only fight until it had secured the withdrawal of Israel from South Lebanon, Hezbollah's ideology is altogether more radical. Hezbollah considers the whole of Palestine to be occupied Muslim land and contends that Israel has no right to exist. Such ideology suggests that Hezbollah's objective of forcing Israel out of South Lebanon may not be an end in itself, but a prelude to an onslaught against Israel. The party leadership refuses to state whether it would stop attacks if Israel withdrew from South Lebanon.
Let the Israelis withdraw and then I'll answer. Keeping some of the cards is normal. It gives strength to the position of Lebanon. The Israelis never show their cards. They hide a lot of the things to do with the future.
Nasrallah cannot show his cards because this is might lead at the same time to split within the party itself. Should Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, who's the Secretary General of this party, for example, follows the pattern that, okay, we will disarm and we will confine basically ourselves into politics, then one ought to question the radical elements in the party, especially the military elements of the party. Those might not be satisfied with such model or such pattern that the party should follow.
Even if Hezbollah and Amal were to stop their attacks if Israel withdrew from South Lebanon, the Palestinians, for their part, are determined to go all the way. They have vowed to fight until the state of Israel is destroyed. Abu Khalid is the leader of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command in Lebanon. His group has remained active over the years in launching attacks on Israel from South Lebanon. We interviewed Abu Khalid inside the group's secret underground base in Ain al-Helwi camp.
We now have Katyushas and armor-piercing missiles. Each era has its own weapons. We have friends around the world who support our cause and supply us. We cannot specify who they are, but they supply us in good quantity.
These Palestinians are preparing for the day when they may assume the task of continuing the resistance against Israel. They may well find that they have an important backer in the region.
It has been rumored that the Syrians have threatened, through indirect channels, to continue to use the Palestinians against Israel. The argument has been similar to the following. Well, Indeed, the Israelis have pulled out of Lebanon, so Lebanese parties will no longer attack Israel. But the Israelis have not pulled out of occupied Palestinian territories. So who are we to prevent the Palestinians from continuing attacks against Israel?
احنا التدريب عندنا متواصل ومستمر والمتطوعين دائما بالمئات متطوعين.
Our training is continuous. A steady flow of volunteers come from all camps. Hundreds come here from Syria and Lebanon. The training programs are continuous, and we are ready at any time to carry out a military operation.
Besides training themselves, the Palestinians have gained important experience of guerrilla fighting through coordination with Hezbollah.
Our relationship with Hezbollah is one of shared struggle. We have the same goal. There is a lot of common denominators between us and Hezbollah. Hezbollah attacks the Zionist enemy because South Lebanon is occupied. We fight the Zionists because Palestine is lost and raped by the enemy. A lot of planning takes place to ensure the operations are successful through a joint operation room.
The groups in Lebanon have found a common cause in fighting the Israelis. Amal has rejoined the resistance. Hezbollah still refuses to state if it will disarm, and a new generation of Palestinians are rearmed and ready to strike. Israel faces a dilemma, whether to stay on in South Lebanon and accept the cost of casualties, or to withdraw and risk facing attacks on its northern border. Nobody in South Lebanon is going to make the choice easy for the Israelis.
Allahu Akbar, Takbir! Allahu Akbar,